All right, get ready, because today we're diving deep, and I mean deep. We're talking older than the pyramids, older than Stonehenge.
Older than time itself, some might say.
Haha, pretty much. We're talking about a primordial Serpent Mother goddess, a figure so ancient, her story stretches back about 70,000 years.
Yeah, 70,000 years. To put that in perspective, that's way before even the earliest known cave paintings. We're going off of some really fascinating research here, a scholar's perspective on this ancient, like really ancient concept of a divine feminine serpent.
So who is this mysterious figure? Why should we care about something that goes back that far?
Well, she's considered one of the oldest, if not the oldest representation of the divine feminine, and we're not just talking about one specific culture or region here.
Right, we see similar figures pop up all over the world.
Exactly. She's everywhere. It's this presence across continents and throughout history, almost like she's woven into the very fabric of, well, us.
Woven into our being. That's a pretty profound statement.
Yeah.
You're saying this is more than just, like, old myths and legends.
Oh, way more. There are these amazing connections between this serpent imagery and our DNA, our ecosystems, even the cosmos. It's like she represents those big fundamental mysteries, you know? Life, the universe, all that good stuff.
Okay, so we're talking universal mysteries, cosmic connections. But hold on, we also see serpents in modern settings, right? Like in medicine. The rod of Asclepius comes to mind.
Oh, absolutely. That's a perfect example. It just goes to show this isn't just some dusty old symbol. It's still relevant today. And speaking of interpretations, they vary a lot, just like with the rod of Asclepius. Some folks revere her as this source of incredible wisdom. Others are, well, terrified of her power. Some believe she can give you pleasure, others immortality. It really runs the gamut.
So she's this powerful, mysterious figure, open to endless interpretations. Sounds like quite the goddess to me. But where does her story actually begin? When did humans first start telling these tales?
Well, this is where it gets really interesting. There's some evidence suggesting that southern Africa might be her birthplace.
South Africa, really?
Yep. Archaeologists found this incredible 70,000-year-old carving of a snake in the mountains there. 70,000 years old. That's mind-blowing. Okay, but what about ancient Egypt? I mean, they're famous for their goddesses.
Yeah.
How does the serpent figure into Egyptian mythology?
It's all connected. See, the Egyptian goddess Isis, the one with 1,000 names, well, she actually has this much older form, a serpent form, called Washet.
Wait, 1,000 names? Wow, that's a tough act to follow. What else can you tell me about this Washet?
Well, here's the thing. You often see Washet paired up with Nekabet, who's a vulture goddess. And together, they represent those two sides, the solar and the lunar, that essential duality.
So light and shadow, masculine, feminine, the classic opposites.
Exactly. And in ancient Egypt, this all ties into the idea of Ma'at, the principle of truth and balance. It's even reflected in the all-seeing eye, that symbol of achieving spiritual awakening through, well, balance. It's funny how that all-seeing eye is everywhere. Ancient artifacts, the dollar bill.
Yeah.
But you mentioned another Egyptian serpent goddess, one with a pretty unique look.
Oh yeah, Mihan. She's often shown as this coiled cobra oracle, and here's the cool part. She's usually depicted with something like 28 to 36 sections, each one representing a different part of the human spine and, you know, our journey to the center of ourselves, the source.
So the takeaway here is the serpent's form, that coiled energy. It's like a visual metaphor, right?
Yeah.
For our own spiritual journey.
You got it. And that brings us to the really fun part, at least for me, the connections across different cultures, the serpent energy, that journey inwards. It's not just an Egyptian thing.
Right. It's like we're all speaking the same language, but with different accents.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Different accents, I love that. One of those accents comes from India, the Dravidian tradition, which predates even the Vedic traditions. They've got this idea of Kundalini.
Kundalini, right.
Yeah.
Isn't that about awakening some sort of energy inside you?
Exactly. It's this raw, primal energy visualized as a coiled serpent just hanging out at the base of your spine. And through certain practices like meditation or breath work or movement, you can awaken it and guide it upwards. And they say that leads to, you know, enlightenment and ecstasy.
Okay, now that's what I call a glow up. But you're saying there's a connection between Kundalini and those African serpent traditions we were talking about.
A pretty strong one. The Dravidians, those are the folks who spoke Tamil. Well, their language has some shared roots with some of the oldest languages in southern Africa.
Whoa, hold on. Language connections across continents. That changes things. This isn't just a case of similar imagery. It goes deeper than that.
Oh, it goes way deeper. And you remember that 70,000-year-old snake carving we were talking about in South Africa? Well, in that same area, that serpent energy It's called Umbelini.
Umbelini. Okay, now we're talking. Tell me more about this Umbelini.
Well, it's a huge part of those traditional healers in South Africa, the Ngangas. They're famous for their connection to the spirit world, real deal psychic abilities.
So to become a powerful healer, Nganga, you got to master this Umbelini.
Basically. There's this really powerful quote by Credo Mutwa. He's one of those healers, a Sangoma they call them. He describes what it feels like to master Umbelini, and get this, he says it's like a hot coiled snake bursting through the top of your head.
Oh, wow. Talk about a visual. You know, you say that and I immediately think, how do I even begin to wrap my head around that kind of spiritual power? But we're not just talking Southern Africa, are we? You mentioned West Africa too.
Oh yeah, for sure. Over in West Africa, the Serpent Mother, she's got names like Mami Wada, Uhamiri, Dambala. And she's often shown as this part woman, part serpent figure, or even a mermaid, really drives home that duality.
Mami Wada. I've seen those pictures. She's definitely got a look. But there's got to be more to it than just striking imagery, right?
Oh yeah, Mami Wada's stories, they're full of surprises. She's all about healing, especially for women and children, but she's also associated with justice. Strong, fierce, protective, you know. But like any good deity, she's got layers.
Layers, huh? What kind of layers are we talking about here? You've got me intrigued.
Well, she's also connected to sensuality, desire, pleasure. That whole side of her doesn't always get as much attention, probably because of, societal norms. But it's part of what she represents, that primal energy, the life force, all our passions.
She really does defy any simple definition, doesn't she?
Oh.
Powerful, healing, sensual, maybe even a little dangerous. You mentioned something about a personal story connected to Mami Wada, something about the researcher whose work we're exploring.
Oh, yeah. She was struggling with infertility, and she had this sudden urge to paint Isis, but not in her usual way as a mermaid.
Interesting, drawn to that water serpent during a really difficult time in her life.
Exactly. And soon after, she started having these vivid dreams, some even a little, sensual. And here's the kicker. She actually got pregnant. She felt like it was Mami Wada responding to her struggle, that she helps women with infertility, protects them.
Wow, that's powerful. Makes you think this ancient energy, it's not just in the past, right? It's here, it's now, responding to people. This is bigger than just mythology.
Right. And don't forget, Mami Wada's not just about personal healing. She's connected to justice, too. Often shown with a child in one hand and a blade in the other.
Always that duality. Nurturer, warrior, the whole package. You definitely wouldn't want to mess with her.
Not at all. And that brings us to something really important. This deep dive, it's not just about ancient stories and fascinating myths. It's about the practices, the rituals, things people actually do to connect with that serpent energy.
So we've gone from ancient carvings to, Umbelini? No, Mami Wada. It's like a crash course in serpent goddesses. But this isn't just an intellectual exercise, right? You're saying we can actually tap into this serpent energy ourselves.
Oh yeah, totally. We're talking ancient practices passed down for generations. Not about worshiping some far-off goddess, but about harnessing that serpent power within each of us, for healing, for transformation, for connecting to something bigger.
Okay, you've definitely got my attention. So what do I have to do? Give up coffee, become a vegetarian. What's the secret handshake here?
You'll be happy to hear there's no secret handshake. And you can keep the coffee, at least for now. The practices themselves, they're surprisingly familiar. Think primordial movement, dance, the rhythm of drumming, chanting.
Right, so like dancing around a fire, chanting ancient words. I know I should drop my tambourine.
Well, it's not quite a drum circle, but you're not far off. It's about finding that primal energy through movement. Sound. But there's also stillness, meditation, purification rituals, things like that. Even things like soul retrieval and divination, they all tie back to this.
Wow, so it's like a whole toolbox of ancient techniques. But they all have that same goal, to awaken that serpent energy. Isn't that what they call Kundalini?
Exactly. Kundalini, that's the one. It's about awakening that energy and then guiding it, usually upwards. And like we were talking about earlier with Manat, that Egyptian concept, it's also about balance. The light and the shadow within us.
Balance. That's something we could all use a bit more of, right? Especially these days. It's amazing, We've traveled through time and space, from South Africa to ancient Egypt, and it all comes back to this serpent. It makes you wonder, if this wisdom has survived for so long, what does it tell us about our own potential? I mean, our potential for healing, for growth, for connecting to, something more.
I think that's the question, isn't it? This Serpent Mother, she's a reminder that we all have that primal power inside us. And maybe by rediscovering these ancient practices, remembering these stories, we can unlock something profound, something that's been there all along.
Unlocking our potential. Now that's a journey I can get behind. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. It's definitely given me a lot to think about.